This happened last month. I was 32 and spent many evenings at my favorite cafe. It was my escape from the deadlines of my marketing job. I'd been going there for years. Just me, my cappuccino, and the world outside the window. I didn't think much about it. I liked to watch people point. One evening, I sat by the window, the light warming everything. I spotted a girl across the room. She looked nervous, which struck me as odd since she was on a date. I paused with my cup halfway to my lips when I saw her pull out a crumpled $5 bill to pay for her drink. Just then, I noticed the CEO of a tech firm leaning back in his chair. He had that charm people liked, but now he leaned forward, his eyes locked on her. It sent a chill down my spine. Days passed, and I kept returning to that cafe. I couldn't shake the image of the CEO watching that girl. I watched him follow her every move with his gaze. The unease grew. I felt like I saw him everywhere she went. He appeared in the background as she strolled through the park or whispered with her friend at the grocery store. Each sighting made my heart race, and she looked more jittery every time. Then whispers began at the cafe. People talked about their strange connection. I couldn't help but eavesdrop. I overheard bits of conversation. "You want tea? Leave her alone," one woman said. A man replied, "Yes, just being a protector, I think." I didn't know what to believe. I felt like I was spiraling into uncertainty, that I was torn. Should I intervene? Who was I to interfere? Was the CEO a romantic figure or a predator? The air in the cafe thickened with tension, and it became hard to breathe. I could feel my anxiety creeping into, tightening around my chest. One evening, the girl didn't show. I scanned the cafe, hoping to see her, but she was gone. I glanced toward the door and saw the CEO standing too close to the entrance. My heartbeat quickened. Was he waiting for her? I hesitated, but he was looking right at me. His gaze sent shivers down my spine. Was it danger? Or was I imagining things? Maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe it was nothing at all. Then I heard it. A voice behind me murmured, "Why do you care so much?" I whipped around, but nobody was there. My skin prickled with fear. I turned back to the CEO. He hadn't moved, just stood there, watching. It felt wrong. I glanced around the cafe, searching for someone to share my concern. I found empty tables and my heart sank. I was alone in this. The tension rolled through me like a dark wave. I took a deep breath. I didn't know what to do. The voice echoed in my mind. The CEO still watched me, silent as the night. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was tangled in something larger than I understood. Something dark and waiting. The next day, I returned to the cafe, almost against my better judgment. I still didn't know why I felt so drawn to the girl's situation. I just knew I couldn't let it go. As I entered, the familiar warmth washed over me, but the unease clung to my shoulders. I found a seat in my usual spot and scanned the room. There was no sign of her, but the CEO was there. He smiled at me, that charming grin still on his face. I averted my eyes, focusing on the barista as I ordered my cappuccino. Something about that smile didn't sit right with me today. It felt predatory. While I waited for my drink, I glanced around. The whispers from yesterday echoed in my mind. People else seemed uneasy, their eyes darting towards the CEO. I caught snippets of conversation. "He has been following her," a man said. "Someone needs to do something," replied a woman at the table next to me. I couldn't help it. I leaned closer to overhear more. "Did you hear she stopped coming?" One man said. "I guess she got scared off." I felt a twist in my stomach. Scared off? What was happening to her? As I took my drink, I noticed a small piece of paper sticking out from under my cup. I lifted it and found a note. "Meet me outside the cafe," it said. No name, no signature. My heart raced. Was this someone who knew about the girl? Or was this some kind of trap? I looked around, but no one seemed suspicious. The CEO was now engaged in a conversation, completely oblivious. I was torn, anxiety bubbling in my stomach. Should I go? What if it was a setup? But what if it was real? After a few moments of deliberation, I slipped the note in my pocket and decided to investigate. I finished my drink, a knot tightening in my chest. Outside, I leaned against the wall, scanning the street for any signs of the girl or whoever wrote the note. Minutes passed. The sunlight shifted, shadows stretching on the pavement. That uneasy feeling lingered. Then a figure emerged from the crowd. It was a woman, but not her. She walked quickly, her eyes glued to the pavement. Could she be associated with the CEO? Or was she just another lost soul passing by? I stepped forward, drawn by a gut feeling. As I approached, she glanced up but immediately looked away. My instincts kicked in. I had to know. "Hey," I called out. She stopped, and to my surprise, she turned back. There was something familiar about her. "Do you know the girl who used to come here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She hesitated, eyes darting around before she whispered, "You need to leave this alone." My pulse raced. "What do you mean?" "Just trust me," she replied, her voice strained. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there, frozen, the weight of her words washing over me. What was I tangled in? I felt like I was losing my grip, and then I saw it. The CEO was walking towards me, his expression shifting from casual to something darker. I had to make a choice now. I turned to flee, my heart pounding. This was getting too intense, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening wasn't just sinister, it was personal. I ran down the street, the echoes of conversations swirling in my head. My heart raced with each hurried step. I wasn't just escaping the CEO. I was running from a scenario that felt like a terrible dream closing in. The inkling of danger had shifted from mere unease to a tangible threat. I ducked into a narrow alley, panting, trying to catch my breath. My mind raced as I leaned against the cool brick wall. Who was that woman? What did she know? I pulled out the note from my pocket and rubbed the edges of the paper between my fingers. It felt like the only clue I had. After a minute, I peered out from the alley. The cafe was still in sight. The CEO now leaning on the entrance, eyes scanning the street. I could see the tension in his posture. He was waiting for something or someone. My gut twisted. Was I being watched too? I slipped back into the shadows, I took a deep breath and forced myself to think. The woman said to leave it alone, but how could I? Something was wrong. I had to figure out what was going on. Without a plan, I felt the dread creeping back in, so I decided I needed more information. Maybe someone in the cafe would know about the girl. That I waited until the CEO turned away, distracted. I quickly slipped back inside, heart pounding, scanning for familiar faces. The barista was there, cleaning the counter, but my eyes drifted to a woman sitting alone at a table in the corner, notebook open. I recognized her as someone I had seen in the cafe before. I wondered if she had seen the girl. Taking a deep breath, I walked over. "Hey, do you have a minute?" I asked, keeping my voice low. She looked up, confusion in her eyes, but nodded. "Sure, what is up?" "I'm looking for a girl who used to come here. She has been around lately. Do you know what happened to her?" The woman's expression changed, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "You mean the one with the $5 date?" I remember her. My stomach dropped. "What do you know?" She leaned in closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "I overheard something," she said nervously. "There were rumors about her and the CEO. You should really be careful. It's dangerous." "Dangerous?" I echoed. The word hung heavy between us. Before she could answer, the cafe door swung open. It was him. The CEO strode in with purpose, scanning the room. I recognized the cold glint in his eyes as he searched for me. My heart jumped, and I felt heat rise to my cheeks. There was nowhere to hide, and my mind raced for an escape plan. That I glanced towards the barista, hoping for an ally, but she seemed to avoid eye contact, her attention firmly on the coffee machine. I turned back to the woman at the table. "What do we do?" "He has coming. Act casual," she whispered urgently. "Just don't look at him." I forced my hands to relax and focused on my breathing. Momentarily, the world shrank down to that single table, the air thick with tension. Then everything shifted. I caught the CEO's eye. He smirked, recognition flickering across his face. That's when I realized this wasn't just a coincidence anymore. I was about to step into something much deeper and darker than I could have ever imagined. I felt a rush of panic as the CEO's gaze locked onto me. I couldn't let him know I was afraid. Instead, I forced a smile and looked down, pretending to check my phone. Sweat formed on my brow, and my gut twisted tighter. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself, just loud enough for the woman to hear. She nodded, eyes darting toward the CEO as he moved closer. "Hey," he called out, announcing his presence with an unsettling familiarity. "What are you doing over here?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I tried to tune him out, focusing on the woman instead. She seemed equally uneasy, her pen tapping nervously against the notebook. "Are you with anyone?" He pressed, taking a step closer. I could feel the heat radiating off him like a wild animal, stalking its prey. "No," I finally managed to say, my voice shaky. Just writing." I gestured vaguely toward my imaginary notes. He stepped to my side, his presence invading my space. "Writing about what?" I glanced at the woman, who was clearly panicking now. I didn't want to put her at risk, so I decided to take a different approach. "Just jotting down some thoughts," I replied, trying to sound nonchalant. The CEO eyed me with that same calculating look, but then he turned away. "Keep it up. You might be writing your next bestseller." He chuckled, but his eyes said everything I needed to know. He was not joking. As he walked away, a wave of relief washed over me. But I knew it wouldn't last. "We need to get out of here," I said to the woman, sensing the urgency in the air. "Agreed," she replied, almost whispering. I glanced around, looking for the quickest escape. The cafe was packed, but the back door was just a few steps away. I could feel my heart pounding again, but this time it was fueled by adrenaline. "On the count of 3, I said. 1, 2, 3. We both sprang to our feet, and within moments, we rushed toward the door. The noise of the cafe faded as we slipped into the alley, where the chaos of the world outside swallowed us whole. "Thanks for that," the woman said, catching her breath. "I didn't think we'd make it." "What did you hear about the girl?" I asked, my urgency amplifying with every second. "You saw something, didn't you?" Her expression turned serious, and she nodded. There were whispers about deals gone wrong. People in the know would mention her as a pawn in something bigger. They said the CEO was involved, but it was all speculation until you showed up. "Speculation?" I echoed, a knot forming in my stomach. "That doesn't explain why he was looking for me. Maybe it's not just about her. Maybe it's you. You need to be careful," she warned, glancing back toward the entrance. "If he's onto you." Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket, shattering the moment of safety. I pulled it out to see a message from an unknown number. "I know what you're doing. Stop now, or we'll be too late." My pulse raced. "We need to move. Now." As we turned to leave, I heard footsteps echoing behind us, and my heart dropped. Someone was coming, someone who knew exactly where to find me. We darted into the narrow alley, adrenaline pushing us forward. The footsteps grew louder, echoing off the brick walls. As we reached the end, I spotted a cluster of dumpsters, shadows clinging to them like dark secrets. "Quick," I whispered, pulling the woman behind one of the dumpsters as I pressed my back against the wall. My breath quickened, but I forced myself to stay quiet. I listened intently. The footsteps halted just outside the alley. I could see faint light filtering through the gaps in the dumpster. My heart raced as I felt the weight of the moment settle over me. "What do we do?" she asked, panic rising in her voice. "Just stay still," I urged. I couldn't think of a plan, but I knew we needed to buy some time. If it was the CEO or one of his goons, confronting them wouldn't end well. I peeked around the edge ever so slightly. A figure loomed at the entrance to the alley, scanning the area. I couldn't see their face, but the way they stood there felt imposing. "They can't just disappear," the figure said, voice low yet commanding, sending a shiver down my spine. "Who is that?" the woman whispered, eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," I replied, my eyes glued to the figure. Just when I thought they might turn away, they stepped deeper into the alley, their silhouette morphing into the light. My breath caught as I recognized the outline, a well-fitted suit and polished shoes. It was the CEO. We had entered a dangerous game that neither of us were prepared for, and I felt the weight of that truth pressing heavily on me. I glanced at the woman beside me. "We need to stay calm. He doesn't know we're right here." The CEO scanned the ground, looking for clues. "They were just here," he muttered. "We can't let them slip away again." "Shit, he's hunting us," I said under my breath, my fists clenching. In that moment, I realized that my phone vibrated again in my pocket. I pulled out cautiously. Another message. Don't run. You're putting yourself in more danger. Who is it from? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Unknown, but they might be trying to help, I replied, unsure of how to interpret the message. The CEO was becoming more impatient, glancing over his shoulder as if he added up all his options. I felt desperation claw my insides. Just then, the sound of a motorcycle revved to life near the mouth of the alley. The figure turned sharply, momentarily distracted. It was our chance. Now, I hissed. We sprang out from behind the dumpster, sprinting toward the mouth of the alley, where shadows danced as the light of the motorcycle illuminated the ground. The engine roared as the biker jerked the handlebars, but my focus zeroed in on the escape. Just as we reached the edge of the alley, I heard the CEO shout, "Get them!" I pushed the woman ahead of me as we burst into the street. The bike sped off, and just as I turned to see where we could hide next, a hand shot through the shadows and grabbed my arm. My heart skipped a beat as I prepared to fight, but then I looked up. It was a stranger, a man who wore a tense expression, yet his gaze held an odd glimmer of recognition. "You need to come with me. Both of you. Now." I hesitated, fear crawling back into my gut, but there was no time to assess the situation. The CEO's voice echoed behind us, chasing us into the unknown. "Run," I shouted, grabbing the woman's hand and following the stranger into the night. We dashed down the street, the stranger leading the way. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a reminder of the danger we were sprinting from. The woman stayed close to my side, her breathing shallow and rapid as we turned corner after corner. "Which way?" I gasped, trying to keep pace with the man in front of us. "Just a bit further. There's a place we can hide," he said, glancing back nervously. I could hear the distant roar of the motorcycle fading, but the CEO's men could be anywhere. Finally, we dove through a door marked employees only. The stranger pushed it shut with urgency, and I felt the weight of a momentary pause in the chaos. We stood in a cramped hallway, the scent of grease and old coffee heavy in the air. "This way," he instructed, motioning for us to follow. The woman looked at me, uncertainty clouding her eyes. I nodded, hoping to ease her fear. "Who are you?" I asked, still cautious. I needed answers. "How do you know us?" He turned, his face grave. "I can't explain everything right now, but I've been watching you. You've been targeted. The CEO knows who you are, and he won't stop until he finds you." "Targeted for what?" I pressed, still skeptical. "Because of the information you have. The files you took," he said, locking eyes with me. "They'll do anything to get them back." My heart sank. The truth of his words washed over me, making my stomach churn. I remembered glimpsing those files on my phone just hours ago. I didn't understand everything, but I knew just enough to know it was dangerous. "Listen, we need to move fast," he said, urgency creeping into his voice. He gestured toward a set of stairs leading upward. "The roof will give us a better view of the street. We can plan our next move from there." Without waiting for any more debate, he took off up the stairs, the woman and I close behind. As we climbed, I felt a mix of hope and hopelessness. My mind raced, replaying all the steps that had led me here. At the top, we pushed open a door that led to the rooftop. The night air hit me like a slap, refreshing yet fraught with danger. I could see the city lights flickering below, but the urgency of our situation pulled me back. The stranger pointed. "If we can get across to the next building, there's a fire escape. It might lead us to safety." I glanced at the woman. "Can we jump that far?" She looked startled, but nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. I took a deep breath and stepped closer to the edge, surveying the wide gap between buildings. "On 3, the stranger said, almost shouting to be heard over the city noise. 1, 2, then. A sudden crash echoed below. I whipped my head around. The door we just came through burst open, and there stood the CEO's men, flooding onto the rooftop, the shadow of the CEO at their back. "Run," I yelled, adrenaline surging as I bounded forward. The woman followed, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Just as we reached the edge, I turned to see the men closing in. There was no time left. I leapt into the empty air, praying for luck and a way out of this nightmare. That's when everything went dark. I landed hard, the impact jarring my body as I hit a narrow ledge. The air rushed from my lungs, leaving me gasping. I rolled to my side instinctively, my instincts screaming to get low, to hide. I barely took a moment to process my surroundings. Above me, I could hear voices shouting. The CEO's men were on the roof, and their anger rang through the air. I could make out snippets of their conversation, curses and commands echoing above. They were looking for us. Where are they? One of them yelled, a thread of frustration lacing his tone. I pressed my back against the cool brick wall, trying to make myself as small as possible. My heart raced again, this time from panic. The woman landed next to me, eyes wide with fear. Are we safe? She whispered, glancing up. I don't know, I admitted, not wanting to lie. I peeked over the edge of the ledge, just enough to catch a glimpse of the rooftop. I could see the silhouette of the CEO's men moving, searching. I think we can get down from here, I said, scanning for a way out. We just have to be quiet. Okay. She nodded, determination flickering in her expression. I shuffled backward, searching for a way that wouldn't lead us directly into their grasp. There was a fire escape directly across from us, partially obscured by the building's edge. My gut told me that was our best chance. Follow my lead, I instructed, and I crept along the ledge, keeping low. Every sound seemed magnified. My breath, the distant rumble of traffic below, faint shouts from the rooftop above. I reached the corner cautiously. Now, I whispered, motioning for her to follow. We moved as one, ducking under the cover of the wall. I glanced up again, and my heart dropped. The men had moved to the far side of the roof, but one turned, scanning the area. Go, I urged, pushing the woman gently toward the fire escape. We darted across the ledge just as another shout echoed from above. My blood ran cold. I could feel their gaze as we scrambled toward the stairs of the fire escape. Just a few more steps, I thought, willing my legs to move faster. Once at the stairs, I stopped. Wait, I whispered, trying to hear if we were still being pursued. The world around me felt too still. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted behind us, the door to the rooftop slamming open. The voices grew louder. They went this way. A deep voice called, tinged with urgency. My stomach dropped. Now, I shouted, and we rushed down the fire escape, adrenaline pushing us forward. Each step reverberated like a drum, but I pushed the fear aside. We reached the ground level, and I glanced back to see a figure emerging at the top of the stairs. Run to that alley, I yelled, pointing that we dashed into the narrow space, the shadows swallowing us whole. I could hear breathing heavy fast. It was mine and hers, and I felt the panic rising again. But we couldn't stop. The alley opened up into the street, and I took off left, pulling the woman with me. I needed to find a place to hide, to regroup. That's when I noticed a small cafe, dimly lit and cozy. Inside, I urged, and we slipped through the door just as I heard footsteps approaching. The cafe was quiet and warm, an oasis of calm in the storm we'd just escaped. But I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on us. Do you think we're safe? She asked, glancing anxiously around the room. And that's when I saw him, sitting at the far table, the same man I had noticed before. The CEO, he was staring directly at me. I felt a chill run down my spine as our eyes locked. The CEO's gaze was unwavering, piercing through the dim light. There was a moment when the world faded, and it was just the two of us. My breath hitched in my throat, and my heart raced, caught between wanting to run and needing to confront him. What are we going to do? The woman beside me whispered, her voice trembling slightly. She had noticed the shift, too. We were not safe here, not now, that I forced myself to break the gaze. Let us sit, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I led her to a small table in the corner, trying to shield us from his direct line of sight. I hated this feeling of being cornered, like prey in the presence of a predator. As we sat down, I scanned the cafe. A few patrons were scattered around, engaged in their own conversations. Each smile felt like a lie, a cruel joke being played while we were hunted. We need to blend in, I murmured, ordering coffee from the waitress who approached us. her smile oblivious. "I can't just sit here," she said, her voice tense. "What if they find us?" I didn't have an answer. The CEO was still watching, but I could see frustration tugging at his features. He leaned back in his chair, speaking quietly into his phone. I couldn't hear the words, but the tension in his posture was palpable. Whatever his men were doing, it wasn't working. "Do you know him?" she asked, eyes darting between me and the CEO. "No," I replied, trying to sound confident. "But he is dangerous. We have to stay low." The waitress placed our coffees down. I thanked her with a nervous smile, hoping to not draw attention to ourselves. I tried to focus on the aroma, the warmth of the cup in my hands. But my mind was racing. What was he doing here? Why was he looking for us? Then it hit me. The files, I murmured, the memory surfacing. I had seen something in the office, a document revealing shady dealings that could have cost him everything. He asked after the information we took. "Then we need to go," she said, her voice rising slightly. Panic set in, and I felt my stomach twist. "Not yet," I replied firmly. "We need to wait for the right moment." As we sat in silence, I noticed a man with a dark coat enter the cafe from the street, his expression intent. He scanned the room, and my heart dropped when he locked eyes with the CEO, who nodded slightly. This wasn't just a chance encounter. It felt premeditated. I could sense the impending danger. The CEO gestured toward the door, and the man turned, heading for the exit. "They're coming," I said urgently, adrenaline flooding my system. "We have to move now." I rose from the table, waving over the waitress. "Check, please," I called out, scanning the cafe. The woman looked at me, fear etched into her features, and I took her hand, ready to make a break for it. But just as I turned, the door swung wide, and the dark-coated man stepped back in, locking eyes with me. He held something shiny, a badge. "Don't even think about running," he shouted. Fear erupted in my chest. I could hardly breathe. I glanced at the woman, who was frozen beside me. This was it. We were trapped. I didn't think. I just reacted. "Run," I yelled, grabbing the woman's hand and yanking her up. The cafe seemed to slow down around us, every face turning toward the commotion. My heart raced, thumping wildly against my ribcage. I could feel the dark-coated man's eyes on us, but I didn't stop to check if the woman was following. I dashed for the back exit, pulling her along. A voice boomed behind me. "Stop!" I plunged through the door, leading us into a narrow alley. The cool air hit me like a slap, invigorating yet terrifying. I glanced back just in time to see the man push through the cafe door, his eyes wide with fury. "Where now?" she gasped, her breath coming in short bursts. "Follow me." I sprinted down the alley, adrenaline pulsing through my veins. Grit crunched beneath my shoes as we darted past trash bins and shadows. My mind raced for a plan, but panic made it hard to think straight. "Why is he after us?" she asked, half whispering, panic evident in her voice that I didn't dare answer. I could feel the weight of the last few days pressing down on me. The documents we stole were dangerous, more dangerous than I had realized. I should have known that information like that didn't come without consequences. I turned a corner and stopped in my tracks. A street filled with cars and pedestrians sprawled before us. The crowds were either oblivious or deliberately ignoring the chaos we had just escaped. "We need a place to hide." She nodded, scanning the area. "What about that store?" She pointed to a small convenience shop a few doors down, its neon sign flickering in the fading light. "Let us go." We moved quickly, slipping inside, just as I heard the dark-coated man's footsteps behind us. The bell above the door jingled, and I forced myself to catch my breath. Inside, the store was cramped and cluttered. Shelves filled with snacks and sodas lined the walls, casting shadows that felt stifling. I could see the cashier, a bored-looking man, scrolling through his phone. I pulled the woman toward the back of the store, ducking behind a shelf. "We can't stay here long," I whispered urgently. "If he sees us," she cut me off. "What do we do? We can't just wait." I was about to respond when a door at the back of the store swung open. A soft clang echoed as a group of men spilled out, all wearing black jackets. My stomach dropped. They were all just as dangerous as the dark-coated man. A new wave of panic filled me. I could tell she was about to say something, but I held a finger to my lips, praying they wouldn't notice us. "Get the files," one of the men instructed, his voice sharp. He said they'd be here. I exchanged a frantic glance with her. They knew exactly where to look. Before I could think, I caught sight of the exit behind the men. There was no time. I had to act. "Stay close." I tapped her arm and then edged away from her hiding spot. "Wait," she whispered, but I was already moving. That is when I saw a way out that might lead us to safety or straight into the hands of our pursuers. But there was no choice. We had to take the risk. I slipped around the shelf, heart racing, glancing back to see if she was close behind me. The voices of the men growing louder made me wince. "They can't be far," one said. "The files are crucial." Each word cut through the air like a knife, lighting a fire of fear in my stomach. I held my breath, eyes darting to the exit as I maneuvered quietly, moving past the men who were still discussing whatever sinister dealings they were involved in. They were so focused that I was convinced we could get out. "Let us head out the back," I whispered to the woman, who nodded, her face a mask of fear and determination. If we could just make it through, perhaps we could catch our breath and figure out our next move. As we crept toward the door, the jingle of the front bell startled us both. The dark-coated man had emerged from the chaos outside and strode in confidently, scanning the room. "Did they come this way?" he asked, voice smooth yet menacing. My heart sank. We were trapped, and I glanced at the storage room. A surge of panic gripped me. "There!" I hissed, pointing to a door labeled staff only that was still slightly ajar. "We need to move." We darted to the door, pressing it open just as the dark-coated man's attention snapped toward us. "Stop!" he shouted. The urgency in his voice shattered the moment. We rushed through the door, pushing it shut behind us, praying it wouldn't creak too loudly. Inside the storeroom, boxes and crates were stacked everywhere. A faint light flickered overhead as we turned to search for a way out. "Which way?" she whispered, panic suffusing her tone. "Let us check for another exit," I urged, already pulling her deeper into the cramped space. We moved cautiously between boxes, scanning for windows or other doors. My heart pounded, the muffled voices of the men bleeding through the walls like a chilling reminder of our fate. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the main shop as one of the men slammed something down. "They went this way," he yelled. My throat tightened. "This way," I said again, my voice barely above a whisper. We moved toward the back, where a small window was barely visible among the shadows. "Can we fit?" she asked, glancing back nervously as another crash echoed from the main area. "It's our only option," I said, pushing aside a crate. I quickly shoved my shoulder into the window frame, peeling it open. It gave a reluctant creak as I squeezed one leg through, turning back to help her. "You go next, quick!" As she climbed through, I heard voices approaching. "This way. You gotta be around here somewhere." Cold dread washed over me, and I slipped out of the window just as I heard them enter the storeroom. The air outside felt thick, and I glanced around frantically, trying to get my bearings. We were in a narrow alley behind the store, with towering buildings on either side and the ominous presence of danger still trailing us. "Where do we go now?" she asked, breathless and wide-eyed. "I don't know." I could feel the despair creeping in, mingling with my adrenaline. "We just have to keep moving." We sprinted down the alley, my mind racing through every possible escape plan. I thought of getting to a safe space far from the cafe, but that meant facing the open street again. I knew they would be looking. As we reached the end of the alley, I paused to catch my breath, glancing back nervously. The echoes of footsteps faded briefly, but I couldn't shake the feeling they were right behind us. "Over there." I pointed to a cab at the curb, its driver sitting casually inside, unaware of the chaos. I gestured for the woman to follow. "Hey, we need a ride." I ran up to the cab, pounding the hood. The driver looked up, startled. "Get in." She hurried forward, climbing into the back seat as I dove in beside her. "Go, just go," I shouted, my heart racing as I caught a glimpse of the dark-coated man turning the corner behind us, scanning frantically. The driver, confused but compliant, hit the gas just as the man raised his arm, shouting. The cab lurched forward, pulling onto the street as I felt a wave of relief wash over me, though it was short-lived. "Where to?" the driver asked, glancing back with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Anywhere but here," I barked, my eyes darting to the rearview mirror, watching for any sign of pursuit. As we sped away, I turned to the woman beside me, panting and wide-eyed. But instead of relief, there was something else in her expression, something I couldn't place. "What did you see?" I asked, my voice shaky. "What do they want?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering to the road ahead, and I could tell she wasn't ready to explain. "I'm not sure," she murmured, glancing back at me with an uncertainty that mirrored my own anxiety. The cab ride stretched on. The further we distanced ourselves from the cafe and the chaos, but the weight of unanswered questions felt heavier than the fear that had haunted us just moments before. As the city lights faded into the distance, an uneasy silence hung in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't out of danger yet. The shadows were still lurking, waiting for us to slip up. And no matter where we ran, I couldn't escape the nagging question: how deep did this go? And who could I trust as we plunged into the unknown? The city sprawled before us like a labyrinth, each turn hiding secrets that were better left buried. I moved to place my hand on her shoulder, wanting to comfort her, but instead, I left her simply staring out the window. Sometimes, running only led you deeper into darkness, and I still felt the looming dread of uncertainty hovering just over my shoulder. Whatever awaited us next, whatever shadows we might uncover, it all felt just beyond reach, waiting for us to grasp it, to pull it into the light.